Welcome, number one, Bengals Podcast. I'm your host, Dadio McDuke. I'm joined, as always, by John, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young Sheeran. That's right. This man is a harmony unto himself. Beautiful voice, beautiful perspective on the Bengals. How you doing, John?
Crosby, Stills, and...
Yeah, you got to look them up.
Nash? Yeah.
Well, they had Neil Young for a while. That's when they were
really?
at their peak, John. Yes, that is greater than just that's the biggest compliment I can pay you.
Got the Canadian twist in there. I didn't know that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So how is everything, John? Are you excited about our guest?
Oh, I'm very excited. You know, it's like the credibility of the show somehow still hasn't tanked yet, where we can still get credible guests. Yeah, right.
It's amazing. They have no idea what they're in for.
It's you, the one who's reaching out, which is even crazier.
I don't think. Yes. Yeah, it's that's why I made my profile picture so small. No one can tell what I look like. They have no idea what they're getting themselves into. But it's okay because look, we appreciate this guest. I'm going to tell you, he's the greatest guest that we've ever had on the show. And we've had a lot of Hall of Famers. We've had Pro Bowlers. We've had past presidents of, we're just amazing guests, but this is the most impressive guest I've ever had on the show. This man is a Hall of Fame caliber athlete. He was a councilman during his playing career. He founded the sports for the Disney, and he is just an all-around very resilient and powerful and lovely human being. We're talking about Reggie Williams, and we're going to bring him on in a couple of minutes. But first, John, we have to talk about Brinks.tv. And I'm sure you know that Brinks.tv has a new podcast. It's called, MTG Devolution. And at first I thought that was like MVG Devolution. At first I thought that was, MTG, yeah, MTG. I thought that at first it was a G-rated MTV, but then I found out it's about Marjorie Taylor Greene and how she says that she's living proof that evolution isn't real. And so that's a fascinating podcast about her, and looking forward to listening to that. And also, look, if you're watching us on the Believe channel or anywhere else, know that you can go to DNH Sports TV on YouTube and subscribe, comment. Please go there right now if you're watching live, or go to Brinks.tv and leave us comments, and we'll put them up on the board. Courtney and Herbert will take care of that. Okay, John. Without further ado, I think that we should bring on Mr. Reggie Williams.
There he is.
There he is, the legend.
Glad to be on your show.
Thank you. How are you, sir?
I'm doing real good. Living here in Orlando, where my 3 sons reside, and my 4 grandchildren, with 1 on the way any day now.
Oh, wow. Well, congratulations.
Any day. Like, are you on like heels and toes right now? Like, is it just like a countdown?
My son is. I'm not quite yet. I've been through a few of these, but I'm excited to see the family grow.
Yes. Well, so are we. We hope to see future Reggie Williams for the Bengals franchise, of course, and elsewhere, and for the world. Because you, sir, have had a very impressive trajectory as I don't even know what to say, professional, as a leader. And my first question is this: how does one manage to be a councilman, which you were your last 2 years as a football player? How does one even find the time to campaign or to even, how does that work?
No, it really was a lot of time management. I had a great team. I was a charter candidate, which meant that I had to go against both the Democrats and the Republicans in what is, primarily a Republican municipality area. But I had great support from the team. Both Sam Weish and Mike Brown both allowed me to miss Wednesday, which is a very important day in preparation for the week's opponent, because that's when you install your defense. But that was also City Council Day. So you definitely couldn't do that. I went to City Council during the day off, which was Tuesday. And on Mondays, I would work out in the morning, and then go to city council in the afternoon. But I think it really, floated everyone's boat. Yeah. Everyone got better. If someone's doing, 2 jobs at the same time, my teammates really were putting extra time into their 1 job. And so it was that time of my career where all that was on my mind was getting back to the Super Bowl. Having played in Super Bowl 16, the very first one that the Bengals played in, and the fact that it was in Pontiac and it was so close to my hometown of Flint, Michigan, and one of the players on the San Francisco 49ers, their starting running back was Ricky Patton, and he was my teammate at Flint Southwestern High School. And so that was the first time and still the only time that 2 high school teammates played against each other in a Super Bowl. Wow. But I knew that only one of us was going to go home with a Super Bowl ring. And so for the rest of my career, and by the time we got to playing on city council, I was definitely involved in the community and trying to do everything I could to make it a better place for children. But I definitely wanted to go back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Well, I read somewhere that you said your fondest memory of the Super Bowl was that Diana Ross pushed you out of the way. And you said that pleased you. I just want to know what happened with that. Where did that go, the relationship with Diana Ross?
No, unfortunately, it didn't go anywhere. But, the reason that it was so coincidentally positive is that I grew up in Flint, which is obviously at that time the second largest city in the state of Michigan. We were like the little brother to Detroit. Detroit is, 60 miles away. The Motown sound was the sound of my childhood. And Diana Ross and the Supremes and Marvin Gaye and many other talented musicians really were the part of my childhood, along with playing sports, along with study. So I'm definitely pleased that, I knew she was real and this game was going to be real. And we were hopeful that we were going to create some magic that day. And we almost did, coming back in the second half. It was a great comeback, but unfortunately, the San Francisco 49er goal line stand was too much to overcome.
Yeah. I'm just surprised that Miss Ross took the loss so seriously. I still feel like there was a lot there, but it's a loss. It's okay. It's a kind of a Romeo and Juliet kind of situation. But look, I want to talk about that Super Bowl. I think you said that was the greatest game you ever played. You led the team in tackles. You talked about how you guaranteed a victory, and you did everything in your power to win that game. You almost willed the defense to victory. And then you said, well, because I made that guarantee, I think it was after Super Bowl 16, you guaranteed we'll be back and we'll win it. And then it didn't happen. And you left the city, which says a lot about your emotional connection with the fans and with the community. I just thought that was a very powerful kind of sentiment.
Well, I left the city and had to resign from city council because I was offered the job to be the general manager of the New York, New Jersey Knights, which was the NFL's desire to export the sport of football to Europe. And we had franchises in Frankfurt, in London, in Barcelona, in Montreal. And it did what it was supposed to do. I mean, now there's an annual game in England. There's a game in Germany, I believe, this year. And there's even players that are coming from some European nations and making NFL rosters. But the game that you're referring to is Super Bowl 23. That's where I led the team in tackles. Right. I had a sack on Joe Montana. Had pressures on Joe Montana.
And that was your last.
They're correct.
That was your last game, right?
That was my best game. It was the last Super Bowl. But the importance of getting back to that big stage was set in Cincinnati when we had to beat the San Diego Chargers in the coldest game ever played in the NFL, minus 59 degrees, wind chill in the AFC Championship. And to have so many great fans supporting us in that abysmal cold and screaming, we knew we couldn't lose. And that's why after we came back on the bus from losing Super Bowl 16, we went down to Fountain Square, and that's where there were the fans gathered as far as you could see. And that's where I promised them, because these fans that were still freezing out in that cold. It was the coldest cold spell in North America. And yet they were dedicated fans. And there is no other fan base, in my opinion, that deserves to feel the thrill of a Super Bowl championship. They felt the thrill of a World Series championship. Now they have to feel something that's, I believe, a little bit better.
It sounds like Reggie wants all Super Bowls for the Bengals to be played in freezing temperatures from that side.
Well, no. I just wish that he had given them some hot cocoa or something instead of making the promise, so we could have seen another 5 or 10 years out of Mr. Williams, because I feel like you had a lot left, but because of that promise, you had to retire. But really, I mean, when I read about what you went through as a player, 24 knee surgeries. I mean, my goodness. I think 3 knee replacements, 4 knee. I mean, and it just seems like, I mean, if you didn't have the disposition that you do, the inner strength. I mean, we talk about John. I mean, Mr. Williams, he went to Dartmouth College, okay, and he earned the respect. I heard him talking about how he overcame speech, difficulties, and then he became a mentor for others for that. So every difficulty, every challenge he was faced with, he took it and he turned it into a strength, which is not something you see a lot these days. So really, I mean, it's just we are so honored to have you as part of our franchise's history. And then we look at the on the field play, and it just blows your mind. The franchise linebacking leader for all linebackers in sacks, with 160 sacks and 230 fumble recoveries and 635.
Why are you?
No, I'm sorry.
160
interceptions. Yeah, 160 interceptions.
But I had a question about that, Reggie, because 23 fumble recoveries. I think there's only like 12 or 11 players all time with more on the defensive side of the ball, and I think 7 of them or 8 of them are in the Hall of Fame. Like, I don't feel like we talk about fumble recoveries enough, because maybe there's a stigma that it's just kind of luck. But to be at the right place at the right time for 23 times, like there's definitely more than just the caliber of luck.
No, I mean, it is being around the ball, but the other side of that statistic is that I caused 24 fumbles. Yeah. So many of those fumbles that I recovered are fumbles that I caused. And that is one of the stats that I'm very proud of. I believe I'm number 2 in total tackles. I know I lead all linebackers in total tackles. Obviously, I lead all linebackers for the Cincinnati Bengals in interceptions, in sacks. So there was a certain consistency. And, I know how I played and for how long I played. Super Bowl 16 season, I was the first linebacker to even get double digits in sacks. I had 11 sacks. Lawrence Taylor, who was the NFC Rookie of the Year, only had 9 sacks. And it was one of those situations where no matter what I did, probably because of the Ivy League stigma for being a linebacker, I didn't make the Pro Bowl that year. And what that did was really focus me even more on how I wanted to make a difference in the community of Cincinnati. That's ultimately what led to being on city council while I was still playing. One of the awards that was given to me was the Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year Award for all the stuff that I was involved in the community. I'd also earned the Byron Wizard White Humanitarian Award and a Sports Illustrated Co-Sportsman of the Year. So some of the things that I was doing to try to make a difference in Cincinnati is sort of standard procedure throughout the rest of the NFL. Anytime that you can really use that platform to make life a little bit better for the citizens and especially the children in that community, that was one of the real priorities. And when I did leave, I always sort of hoped I was coming back, that maybe I was being trained with all the skill sets by being general manager of the New York, New Jersey Knights to be a general manager of an NFL team. But that actually led to me being hired by the NFL to be director of community relations for Super Bowl 27, which was in Pasadena. And this was right after the Rodney King riots. And so that job led to me conceiving and building NFL Youth Education Town, which is a multifaceted education and recreation facility in the most at-risk community in a city, and giving all these kids all of the power tools for success. There were up to 20 plus NFL Youth Education Towns. And it's one of the things I'm also very proud of. But that from doing that, that's how Disney found out about what I was doing. They interviewed me and hired me because they had just bought the Mighty Ducks at that time. Michael Eisner was the person I talked to. His kids had gone to Dartmouth College, and that was one of their graduation gifts. And he came over to my table where I was dining with one of my Dartmouth classmates named Michael Montgomery, who was at that time the treasurer of the company. And he asked me he told me that they had just bought the Mighty Ducks and they had all this land in Walt Disney World. And they were thinking about getting in sports. And what would you do? And that was a question that I answered. And they eventually hired me. And that's what led to the development of ESPN Wide World of Sports.
That's crazy. I mean, I tell you, I followed Disney sports for a long time. You talked about the Mighty Ducks. And I remember that Bud, the dog, who's very athletic, he had a great vertical. And then
there's an adjective
now we have
in front of his name.
Yeah, and now we have the Roadster Racers. And it's the legacy of Disney athletes continues to this day. But what you did, really, like you said, is bringing the youth, giving them a kind of forum to play other sports and to get together and show their competitive juices, really is something that you said, it's kind of changed how sports are broadcast and how they are shared across the world. It's very inspirational. Mr. Williams, I want to talk about getting back to the Super Bowl because you talked about the Bengals franchise and how they deserve it more than anybody else. And look, a lot of people have said things about management over the years, but they've really taken a turn for the better. We would love to see you in the front office. And if you look at the front office, you look at the president, the vice president, the executive president, they all went to Dartmouth, your alma mater. So it seems like you do meet the criteria for being in the front office. I don't know what position you would take if offered. General manager, maybe. I don't know what would interest you. But
no, I'm very, very supportive of the Cincinnati Bengals front office. Yes, the 90s was a tough decade. It was the decade that I was now retired from the team, and I was moving to a new place, both in New York, and then I was hired by Disney here in Orlando. And your reputation, when you're introduced as former Cincinnati Bengals, your reputation becomes the reputation of the team when you're in foreign territory, so to speak. And so I definitely would have loved for the Bengals to be enjoying the kind of success that you thought during your career that you helped build the foundation for, that this will be a contending team every year. And, throughout the 80s, I think that was the one decade where we beat the Steelers many more times than they beat us. I think that's the only decade, except for maybe this current decade that we're working on. So the foundation that we built, the team that, went and played in a Super Bowl in 1981, which was still only 13 years after the franchise was founded in 1968. That still is a historical accomplishment that Paul Brown, should really be applauded for. He got, the team into their first playoffs in 1975, I believe, after 7 years. So the current front office has really stepped up to how the game is played these days, both in terms of drafting and signing players and the right combination of players. And they put together a phenomenal offense and a great defense, and should have been, a Super Bowl champion team if it wasn't for, the final few seconds of this last Super Bowl.
I am curious though, because like before Mike became like the owner after Paul passed away, he was the assistant general manager, I believe, in his early days there. Yeah. So when you were brought in, because you mentioned the stigma against Ivy League athletes at the time, did you guys bond over like the Dartmouth connection? Is that like one of the reasons why like they brought you in the third round?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I was told by the Dallas Cowboys, they lied to me. They told me I was going to be drafted in the first round. And by the time I was still around in the third round, I was personally kind of desperate. I had been drafted by the Toronto Argonauts in the first round. And so when the Bengals finally selected me, I had never been to Cincinnati before. I'd never really watched them play, even though they'd been around. But I was so excited that they drafted me. And then on the first day I was in for rookie camp, I met Mike Brown. We took a picture together. I should have sent it to you beforehand. But from that point in time, I wanted to make Mike Brown proud of him. Quite honestly, I knew that he expressed years later that he knew more about me being at Dartmouth than any other general manager in the NFL. So he took me off the board before someone else could. But I do also treasure and cherish the opportunity to be one of the pallbearers for Paul Brown when he passed away. It was one of the things that it was sort of unplanned. I showed up unannounced at the funeral, but Al Heim, who was the business manager at the time, came up to me as I was signing in and asked me if I would do that. It was such a great honor. So I'm very supportive of the Brown family and all of the success they're bringing, all the love that they're bringing to the city of Cincinnati right now.
Dadio, I don't think we can hear you.
Yeah, I just want to ask one more question about this topic, which is when you look at.
He was too stunned to speak.
You talked about how close they were. Sorry. Yeah, can you hear me now, John?
Yeah, we got you, man.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, when you look at this roster, because you talked about how close they were to winning it all, is there anything missing? To me, I look at it, and we added 3 offensive linemen to the interior of the offensive line, which was our biggest weakness, and we upgraded there, and I don't really see any flaws elsewhere on the roster. We added a few very athletic defensive backs. To me, it seems like a stacked roster with the right kind of disposition and leadership under Joe Burrow to pull it off again. But as you, having seen so much football over the years, what do you see when you look at that roster?
Well, we're going to see how good these offensive linemen are for the Cincinnati Bengals. I hope that they all exceed their expectations. And if they do, then they will have fixed, the biggest flaw that a championship team had that didn't win a championship. If Joe Burrow had more time to look downfield, if they had an opportunity to open up more holes for their running backs, they certainly been even a more potent offense. The only thing that I see that they need on top of the offensive linemen that they've already drafted is they need someone who is a sack threat, someone who the other team have to almost change their offensive game plan to account for. That can be a defensive lineman, a defensive end. It could be an outside linebacker. It could be someone else, but they need someone that causes nightmares to their offensive coordinator of every team that they play against.
Do you think Joseph Asai has that potential? I don't know if you've been following him, but
I have been following him, and he has that potential. But it's about the defensive coordinator calling it. My defensive coordinator was Hank Bulla, and I wish he would have called for me to blitz a lot more. Because I really did have a move that worked against most running backs. And if he only asked me one time, what play would I call? And I told him my favorite blitz, and he called it, and I blitzed, and I was successful. And he never called it again. If he would have called 20 blitzes, I would have had 20 more sacks in any given season. So, it's about how they're playing now. And how they prepare their defensive strategy. I mean, one of the things that we did have was working under Hank Bulla was Dick LeBeau. And that's really where the zone blitz defense started, with the Dick LeBeau and Hank Bulla and our defense of the 80s.
David Fulcher. Yeah, he was on
David
our show.
Fulcher came along in the latter part of the 80s. And he was one of the most supremely talented and big, strong safeties that I ever played with. Bobby Kemp was our Super Bowl 16 strong safety. May he rest in peace. But I would definitely say that David Fulcher was definitely an upgrade from Bobby Kemp.
Yeah, well, speaking of Bengals players past and current, if you will, I want to talk about the linebackers, because I read how much you have appreciation for Jermaine Pratt. And when we drafted Jermaine Pratt, I was excited, because for years and years, we didn't have that athletic linebacker who could cover tight ends. And I didn't know much about him, but I knew about his athleticism and how he moved, and I had hope. And he has developed exactly how we hoped he would. And then you add a kind of guy in Logan Wilson, who's everywhere. He's all over the field. And then we have Akeem Davis-Gaithers, who hasn't even really, I wouldn't say he hasn't hit his stride yet, but he has tremendous potential. And you've talked about how these linebackers, they study the game, they know the X's and the O's, and they are smart players, and you really like their approach to the game. So I wanted to hear what you see in them and the kind of, and their ability. Let's say you talked about the lack of pass rushers, and maybe we don't have elite, defensive backs at every position. Let's say the second cornerback. How can those linebackers solidify that defense?
I think this is like the perfect time for you to put on that clip. I mean, this is what you want. You want the best players that you're playing against to say this about you. And this is Kip from Earl Campbell, who was one of the best Hall of Fame bludgeoning running backs that I played against. And this is the kind of compliment that shows a career of consistency. This just wasn't one game that he was giving an opinion on. He just gave an unsolicited opinion totally out of the blue. So if you have that clip, why don't you run that, please?
Yes, please. Courtney, yeah.
You need the sound on this.
Yeah, we can't. This so happened during the Oilers, and you powered through him on this play. There was an accident. This so happened during the week. He had been talking about this rookie, Earl Campbell. Greatest defense of all time, if you were categorizing, would you put the steel curtain up there? Yes, Joe Green and L.C. Greenwood. And I think because of those two guys, Jack Lambert and Jack Ham could do anything they want to. The toughest guy I've ever gotten hit by, for some reason or other, I've never had a chance to talk to this guy. But him and I was on the same All-American teams in college. We went on the same trips. But for some reason, Reggie Williams, who played for Cincinnati, the politician we know, the nice guy now, would do everything in his power to, no matter where Earl went on Sunday on that football field, Reggie was there. So I would tell Tim Wilson, our fullback, no matter what you do, block Reggie, I'll take care of the rest of it. And that was a whole...
Yeah, well, I mean, that is the greatest honor to hear from a legend like that. But Earl Campbell was one of the toughest runners, and he said you were the toughest defender. But I just have one question. Why didn't you ever pick up the phone and talk to him? He said he never had a chance to talk to you.
he was scared of him, obviously. Like, do you see the respect?
I see.
100%.
You know, actually, he is such a great guy. We did first meet at the actually in Miami because that's where they've had the first Kodak All-American reception. It was in Miami, and so he was a junior at that time. So he was kind of shy. I was a senior, and also on that team was Tony Dorsett. So it really was a great championship team for college football. Great All-American team for college football. Leroy Selman was on that team. Archie Griffin was on that team. There were a number of great players.
So going back to the question about our current linebackers, what do you see in them in terms of toughness and the ability to, let's say, stop a runner, a ball carrier in his tracks?
They're both great tacklers. Both are linebackers. They're smart players. They think well. They anticipate well. Injuries are part of the game. Logan, seemed to play well coming off of his shoulder injury. Jermaine Pratt played consistently, and so I am continuing to look forward to them playing and getting better. And adding that ability to put pressure on the quarterback is something that will benefit the whole defense and benefit either one of their careers. Both of them do well, but there's, to really put, the fear of a blitz package, whatever that blitz package is, or in your standard defense to have a defensive lineman that time and time again is breathing down the quarterback's neck. That is definitely something that championship teams have at their disposal.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The Los Angeles Rams had it. I mean, there was no doubt that was one of the big parts of their game.
Yeah, well, Aaron Donald just said he might have played his last game, or that's the report coming out. I just wish he retired one game earlier. Just one game earlier, we would have had that championship, because really he was the defensive MVP. I mean, he was the MVP of the Super Bowl. I mean, that man, when he turned it on in the fourth quarter, that's when they came back. But look, I want to talk to you, Mr. Williams. The reason we invited you on is the Ring of Honor is coming up, and only 2 people will be selected. And I feel like you have a very strong case. And there's so many great candidates, really. One of the questions we had earlier is, who do you think among the former Bengals belongs in the Hall of Fame? And that, yeah.
Well, Ken Riley definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. His 65 interceptions are much more than several cornerbacks that are already in the Hall of Fame. Ken Anderson was, one of the premier quarterbacks of the early 80s. His completion percentage is one of the best all time. I'm not sure if he still holds the record for most completions in a row, but Ken Anderson definitely deserves it. I think Isaac Curtis was a breakthrough wide receiver. He was that kind of wide receiver that extended the end zone, that really challenged whatever defense you had, because he was going to run right by you. He had that kind of world-class speed. So definitely, those 3 individuals need to join Anthony Munoz, in the Hall of Fame. So I look forward to whatever process the Hall of Fame is coming up with, because it seems like they're going to come up with a process to admit even more players who have been overlooked in the past. And if that happens, then I definitely expect to see Kenny Anderson, Ken Riley, and Isaac Curtis to be the top candidates for the Cincinnati Bengals to get the next inclusions into the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
And how missed out on Reggie Williams, too.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to mention him or not.
Well, I think I've made, a unique difference, both from a humanitarian standpoint, primarily, being a city councilman. My play speaks for itself, a la Earl Campbell, but, I'm a proud Cincinnati Bengal player. Every player that's being nominated to the Ring of Honor is deserving. I wish more players could be inducted every year, but, I appreciate being considered for nomination. 1 year it will happen.
Well,
I just hope that I'll be alive for it when it does happen. And I appreciate all of the support and all the votes for all of the fans, both in this show and throughout Bengal Nation.
But you definitely know how to run a campaign, sir. I mean, you are the only active player to also be an elected official, which is still, we talked about it earlier, but it's astonishing to me because we have actually an HR representative. She's from Flint, Michigan. She couldn't be on the show. She's sick, but she really wanted to talk to you. But I asked her about this a while ago. I just wanted to be the treasurer of the local library. And she said, no, there's actually a law against people who have their own YouTube show also being treasurer. I don't know if that's true or if she's just worried that I will embezzle the funds of the library as well. But it's very difficult work. And the fact that you were able to run that campaign, as you said, your contribution to the community, it really elevates your playing career. And also the inspiration you were to so many people in Cincinnati, the way you came to league, coming from an Ivy League school, facing a lot of, doubters, more than the average, number. And we really hope to see you in the Ring of Honor. Who are your selections, obviously, other than yourself? Who would you think most deserves to get into the Ring of Honor? Because Ken Riley obviously is in there, Ken Anderson's in there. So who do you think should make the Ring of Honor?
I expect Boomer Esiason to get in there. I voted also for Isaac Curtis. So,
okay.
I think they're great. I will say this about my time on city council. And it's only because of the local news about the horrible event in Uvalde. One of the things I fought for when I was on city council, even way back then, because I was so focused in on what was best for kids, was really trying to put a ban in the city of Cincinnati for automatic assault weapons. And I came very close to passing. I was able, the best thing I did on city council actually had to do with forcing our pension board to divest itself from all of the funds doing business in South Africa. I got a call from Archbishop Desmond Tutu saying that he wanted to come to Cincinnati to talk to us. And he talked to me and basically said that was the straw that broke the camel's back, that Nelson Mandela would be getting out of Robben Island prison, and that the Republic of South Africa was about to have the very first democratic election. And at that time, when he told me that, it was almost worth losing 2 Super Bowls for. You felt like you did make a difference on the world stage. And so that's the one thing that I really do encourage all of the current members of the Cincinnati Bengals roster and organization is there's an opportunity to make a difference even beyond the football field. And that's one of the unique platforms of such a successful game that the NFL has become. When I grew up, Major League Baseball was the number one sport. When I was drafted into Cincinnati, baseball was the number one sport. Cincinnati Reds were one of the most popular teams in the country. And so it really happened during our career. You know, I probably most people point to Super Bowl 16 as the point where the scales were turned to the point where the highest Nielsen rating was for the Super Bowl occurred that year for the first time. And that was the game that we battled San Francisco. So there is a whole fantastic, exciting world off the football field, and all be better if every player knows that if they win a Super Bowl, it's going to even be better. So that's my encouragement to the roster, to the organization, is bring us all home a Super Bowl ring.
Thank you. Well, that was beautiful. And we just wanted to talk about now, we want to talk about a couple of important causes. And I know that a lot of players, former players, they didn't necessarily know what they were signing up for in terms of the after effects of playing football. And so they suffered from some head trauma or CTE or things of that nature. And so there's a number of players have come together to file their grievances, if you will, against the NFL. And that includes a number of Bengals, running backs, James Brooks, Rudy Johnson, and Ickey Woods among them. So I just want to know, what do you think needs to be done for these players so they can get the help that they need?
Well, Dr. Umalo, who was portrayed by Will Smith in the movie Concussion, I had a chance to speak to him after he gave a speech out in San Francisco. And he told me, he basically told me I have CTE because of the number of concussions I already had, which were 3 during my 14 years in the Cincinnati Bengals, and the number of years I played at linebacker, which is it's a head-beating sport. So I think that there still needs to be as much research that the NFL can do to really sort of validate the impacts of trauma. One of the pioneers in the sport is Buddy Stevens. Buddy Stevens is the head coach at Dartmouth, and he doesn't have any contact with his players at all during any practice. They have these computerized robotic tackling dummies that they utilize that can run and change directions, and the players hit these tackling dummies and don't hit each other. And so I think that there are a lot of college teams, and now there are a number of NFL teams that have got these robotic dummies called MVP. And the less concussive opportunities that players have, the better. On another point, there's been some recent studies that have shown that cannabis could be beneficial to post-concussive symptoms, that it has been shown to have the ability to repair parts of the brain. And so that should be studied expeditiously, especially since the NFL has had a history of penalizing players who use cannabis. So, the research will really provide a lot of direction. I think the goal to protect the quarterbacks and wide receivers, and other players on the football field has been beneficial. But the game still is very exciting. Even with all of those changes on any given day, when you watch an NFL football game, you will see something somewhere that you've never seen before. And that's what makes the game so exciting and so competitive, and why it is the number one sport in America and becoming the number one sport in the world.
Well, speaking of number one, Mr. Williams, this, as you know, is the number one Bengals podcast. It's not the top rated or anything, but that's just the name of the show. And we want people to support you in your endeavors and your advocacy for a number of important causes, and also your book, your very important, excellent book. It is called Resilient by Nature. There you go. There it is. And I know that they can get a signed copy. Bengals fans get a signed copy from you if they just reach out to you, right?
Yes, they can. I'd be happy to sign any book that anyone can get to me. Obviously, you and I met on Facebook Messenger.
That's right.
So that's probably the best way to contact me. Even if we aren't friends, they will
we are now.
Through, so to speak. Yeah, we are friends.
Yeah, you
now.
told me before the show. You said we're friends now. Yeah.
I've lied. I've used that lie too, Reggie. Don't worry about it.
Well, speaking of, I'm glad John chimed in. You talked about trauma. John complains a lot about the trauma that the show causes him, but we haven't been able to replace him with a robot yet because the analytics that he provides, or actually the research he does, is so advanced that it can't be done by a robot just yet, but we are looking into that. But Mr. Williams, obviously we want people to support you, and we want them to support the Bengals, and the best way to support the Bengals is to support this show. People can go to patreon.com/DHSports, where they can fund the show. Look, we have a fact checker for the show, and we're trying to get her on the show regularly. We can't afford it right now. If we can get up a few more patrons, we should be able to do that. And also you can go to vino.app/DHSports, where you can get a direct line to me and John and to Hoji, who couldn't be here. Yeah, there you go. And you can get texts from us, you can get updates, and you can respond, you can reply, and we will see your replies, and we will chat with you. But that is basically all that we have. I know Mr. Williams has to go. We've held him a little longer than we promised we would. But it was just such a delight, Mr. Williams, to have you on the show.
It was my pleasure, and really, hoo-day to all the Cincinnati Bengals fans. Hoo-day came to be during my career, during the 81 season when it was for real. So who they think gonna beat them Bengals? Where do they play? In the jungle, afraid of nobody. Thanks for having me on your show, and I look forward to joining you again.
Thank you, sir. Definitely.
Thank you, Reggie.
All right, John. Well, that was exhilarating. That was fascinating. I learned so much about myself and about the world, and about education, about children, everything. And really, any kind of impressions from you?
I mean, I hope that you expected to learn a lot, because he's one of the smartest people that we've ever. He's definitely the smartest person who's ever been on this show, and he's one of the smartest people.
Not including the other hosts, but yeah, is that what? Are you including me and Hoji?
Well, I suppose
Hoji's a doctor, yeah.
We can do relative to this current panel, but
yeah.
I mean, phenomenal person, man. And I think if there was more people who are elected officials with that mindset, we probably actually would see some change.
Absolutely, he's a very bold man with he's courageous. And really, I think the Resilient by Nature title is perfect. He really is. I mean, you read his history and what he went through and how he came through. He came out on top and everything. I mean, now we didn't talk about it on the show, but he's his own physical therapist. He is avoiding that leg of his that's been operated on 24 times. He's avoiding that being amputated on his own. If you staying flexible,
if you're dealing with that many things, like, I'm pretty sure you become an expert on it, and I don't think you need to consult anyone else when you've got that much experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, John, I don't know if you have any final thoughts, but I just want music, man. Yeah, I just want people to go subscribe, like, turn on notifications, and read John's articles on cincyjungle.com. Follow him on Twitter as well, John__Shirin. And we will see you next week, hopefully, with Dr. Hoji, Dr. Kisboji, and Bridget back in the room. For now, I'm Dadio Maktouk for John Shirin. So long, Sweetie. Bye.